Let's talk about the GTeng T902C. This one was sent to me courtesy of Litake.com, and I'm gonna call this one the Powerball for obvious reasons. This one is shaped just like a golf ball. Definitely not a lot of quadcopters out there that are like this, but this one has a lot of power, a lot of features, and it flies really well. The only knock I have on the flight characteristics is it flies a little heavy, especially towards the end of your battery life. So you're likely to get into some wobbles of death. Definitely one thing to be aware of on this one, but you will be very surprised at the range on this quadcopter. I have been extremely surprised by how far and how high I've been able to fly this. I discovered this fact by accident, kind of let the quad get away from me a little bit, got a little happy with the throttle, and I got up in the air and I was kind of like, uh-oh, this isn't gonna be good. But to my surprise, I never lost range, never lost signal, and I was able to control the quad the whole time. So it might be a little quadcopter, it might have a funny shape, but it definitely packs a punch. Also very surprising with this quadcopter is the quality of the video. Let's face it, it is a camera quad. It has a 720p camera in it, little pinhole lens. It is slightly facing downward like most quadcopters, but you're not always gonna get a lot of ground footage because you can fly this one so high. And I'm very surprised and impressed with the quality of the video in this quadcopter. The colors are great, no jello wobble. One knock on it, it does not seem to have any sort of LVC warning, or at least not one I can see. The LEDs on this one are a little hard to see. They're kind of like two eyes in the front, and it's got a green light underneath here. And then when you're recording, there's a tiny, tiny little red light, and very hard to notice. If you have it in the air, you're probably not gonna see it. So in the daylight, these LEDs are very hard to see. For all I know, they could be flashing or giving me some sort of LVC warning, but I haven't been able to see it. Haven't really flown this one at night at all, so maybe you are getting some sort of flash from the LVC warning, but you will notice it'll lose power gradually and kind of not necessarily crash, but want to wobble out of the sky. And you'll still be able to fly it for a little while, but it doesn't have the power it does at the beginning of its battery life. I definitely love the look of this one. It's a very unique quadcopter in a market that is oversaturated with X5C clones and Hubsan X4 clones, and you name the quadcopter. If it was popular, they cloned it. Definitely never seen one like this. But you know, maybe they'll start cloning the Powerball design. There are 3 rates on this one, and they're all fairly aggressive. That is one thing I will say about this quad. It is kind of zippy, it is kind of twitchy, so a little bit difficult to control for beginners possibly, but it also has its benefits because in the wind or in adverse conditions like that, it performs very well. It has a lot of power, very maneuverable on all 3 rates. Obviously, you know, the low rate is the most controllable, and you go up to 3 and it gets real zippy in the upper rate there. It's definitely a good thing because you can fly this one around in a lot of different conditions. So among the 3 rates, the yaw changes, and that's pretty standard. Slow on the first rate, and then a little faster on the second, and then a little faster on the third. Definitely not an extreme yaw rate on this one, but fast enough to be able to fly it indoors or in small spaces. And you're definitely gonna have a lot of fun if you're in a big open area flying this one around. The big knock on this one is the battery bay, and I think that was well documented in the unboxing video. Not a lot of room in this battery bay, and this one was stuffed in there so tightly I had a hard time getting the plug out. Thus, I had a hard time getting the battery out. But once I got it out, it's not that huge a deal. There is a little bit of space in this battery bay to tuck the cables in, but it's always gonna be a constant battle of stuffing cables in the back of this thing. Let's talk about the transmitter for a sec. Pretty standard transmitter, little bit small depending on how big your hands are, and I think it's doable for pinchers, but kind of more geared towards thumb flyers. It is sort of like a mini game controller. The upper left is gonna be your video button. The upper right is gonna be your photo button. Pushing the left stick in is gonna cycle through your 3 rates. This one does have headless mode and return to home, and to be perfectly honest with you, did not test either of those functions on this quadcopter. Don't really use those features, and I don't necessarily recommend you use them. So that's all I have to say about the GTeng T902C. Really like this one. I'm calling this one the Powerball. A lot of power packed into such a little quadcopter. Gonna have a lot of fun flying this one around. Highly recommend it. Go pick one up. And if you like this video, be sure to give me a thumbs up. If you haven't missed anything or if you have any questions at all, hit me up in the comments below. If you haven't already, subscribe. Gonna be having more quad reviews, more tech reviews. Whatever people send me, I'll review it. And even some things I buy myself. So that's all I got. I'll check you guys in the next video. Until then, try not to crash and burn, and be nice to each other. Oops. Oh man.